The crystalline spires of Ithoria's capital city pierced the lavender sky like frozen music, their surfaces refracting the light of 3 moons into countless rainbow patterns. Captain Rena Doria stood at the viewport of her diplomatic shuttle, her breath catching at the alien beauty below. After 15 years commanding starships through the most dangerous sectors of space, she hadn't expected this mission to make her nervous. But this wasn't just any diplomatic assignment. The fate of the Earth Alliance's relationship with the powerful Ithorian Empire rested on her shoulders, and she'd been specifically requested by name, though she couldn't fathom why. Final approach to the Crystal Palace, her pilot announced. The Ithorians are particular about arrival protocols, Captain. Rena smoothed down her formal uniform, the medals and commendations feeling unusually heavy. Understood, Lieutenant. Let's not offend our hosts before we even land. The shuttle descended through layers of iridescent clouds, each one seeming to chime with a different note as they passed through. The Crystal Palace grew larger, a masterwork of architecture that seemed to defy physics itself. Its transparent walls contained what looked like suspended stars, and Rena realized they were actually floating crystals producing their own light. A welcoming party awaited them in the landing bay, tall, ethereal figures with silvery skin and hair that seemed to capture and release light with each movement. At their center, seated on what appeared to be a hovering throne of pure crystal, was Princess Seline. Rena had read the briefings, of course. But nothing had prepared her for the reality of the Ithorian ruler. Princess Seline's eyes were pure white, without iris or pupil, the physical manifestation of her blindness. Yet there was nothing weak or helpless in her bearing. She sat with perfect posture, her face turned unerringly toward Rena as if she could see straight through her. Captain Doria, Seline spoke, her voice carrying musical undertones that made Rena's skin tingle. Your thoughts shine so brightly. I've been looking forward to meeting you in person. Rena bowed deeply, following protocol. Your Highness. I'm honored by your invitation, though I admit I'm curious why you requested me specifically. A smile curved Seline's lips. Because, Captain, in all the diplomatic correspondence I've received from Earth, you were the only one whose thoughts never carried pity when they mentioned my condition. You saw strength where others saw weakness. That intrigued me. The assembled Ithorian nobles shifted uncomfortably, and Rena noticed several exchanging looks of disapproval. She realized that Seline was breaking from formal protocol by speaking so directly. I hope I continue to intrigue you, Your Highness, Rena replied carefully. The Earth Alliance values strength in all its forms. Indeed. Seline's smile widened. Tell me, Captain, what do you see when you look at my palace? Music made solid, Rena answered without hesitation. Light given form. Beauty with purpose. A ripple of surprise moved through the assembled nobles. Seline's expression brightened noticeably. Fascinating. Most visitors simply see expensive crystal and architectural showing off. Your mind works differently, Captain Doria. Please, walk with me. We have much to discuss about the future of our peoples. As Rena fell into step beside Seline's hovering throne, she could feel the weight of disapproving stares from the nobles. Clearly, this wasn't how things were usually done. But watching Seline navigate with perfect confidence despite her blindness, controlling her crystal throne through thought alone, Rena understood why she'd been chosen. This wasn't just about diplomatic relations between their peoples. This was about challenging assumptions, about seeing past surface limitations to recognize true power. And somehow, Rena suspected, this was just the beginning of something much bigger than either of them. Through the Crystal Palace's ever-shifting corridors, whispers followed Captain Rena Doria like persistent shadows. 2 weeks into her diplomatic mission, she'd learned to ignore the disapproving murmurs of the Ithorian court. Their opinions meant little compared to the growing crisis she and Princess Seline were working to prevent. Your thoughts are troubled today, Seline observed as they sat in her private gardens. Crystals floated around them like suspended stars, each one humming with its own unique frequency. The princess's hover throne had adjusted to a more casual position, indicating their informal setting. The latest reports from the border regions are concerning, Rena admitted, spreading out a holographic map between them. 3 more incidents between Earth Alliance ships and Ethorian crystal harvesters. No casualties, but tensions are rising. Seline's blind eyes seem to focus on something beyond physical sight. The noble houses are pushing for aggressive action. Lord Theron especially, he's been particularly vocal about humanity's encroachment into what he claims are traditional Ethorian harvesting grounds. Lord Theron, Rena's tone carried a note of distaste. The noble had made his disdain for both her and Seline's unconventional partnership clear. I've noticed he seems to have quite a following among the younger nobles. He represents the old ways. Seline's fingers danced through the hologram, making adjustments that somehow perfectly addressed the problem areas despite her inability to see them. Many fear change, especially change that challenges their comfortable assumptions about power and ability. A crystal chimed discordantly nearby, and Seline's head turned sharply toward it. We have an uninvited guest. Rena was on her feet instantly, her military training taking over. Show yourself. Lord Theron emerged from behind a crystal formation, his silver skin almost glowing with barely contained anger. How dare you meet privately with the human, Your Highness? The noble houses demand proper representation in all diplomatic discussions. The noble houses, Seline's voice carried an edge Rena hadn't heard before, do not dictate my choices, Lord Theron. Captain Doria has proven herself a valuable ally and advisor. An ally? Theron's laugh was cruel. A human who can't even hear the crystal songs? Who doesn't understand our most basic forms of communication? And you, a blind princess who dash. Careful, Lord Theron, Rena interrupted, her hand instinctively moving to where her pulse pistol would normally be. You're dangerously close to insulting your ruler. The air itself seemed to vibrate with tension. The surrounding crystals resonated with it, creating an unsettling harmony. You see? Theron's eyes narrowed. She reaches for a weapon while I speak truth. This is what humanity brings to our sacred halls, violence and chaos. No, Seline's voice rang with authority. She reaches to defend, while you attack with words and prejudice. Leave us, Lord Theron. We will discuss your breach of protocol at tomorrow's court session. The noble backed away, but his expression promised this wasn't over. The houses will not stand for this much longer, Your Highness. Changes are coming, whether you embrace them or resist them. After he left, Rena turned to Seline. He's planning something. Yes, Seline agreed, her expression troubled. His thoughts are clouded. Deliberately so. He's learned to shield them from me somewhat. But there's something else. She reached out, her hand finding Rena's arm with perfect accuracy. The crystals sing differently when you're near. Did you know that? I can barely hear them at all, Rena admitted. But they hear you, Seline smiled. They respond to your presence, your emotions. It's unprecedented. And I think it terrifies those like Theron who believe they alone understand our ways. Rena sat back down, closer to Seline this time. You're saying the crystals themselves are changing because of human presence? I'm saying, Seline's hand slid down to grasp Rena's, sending an unexpected thrill through both of them, that perhaps change isn't something to be feared. Perhaps it's exactly what both our peoples need. The crystals around them hummed in harmony, creating a melody that seemed to wrap around them both. And in that moment, despite the growing political tension and Theron's threats, Rena felt a sense of rightness that transcended both their species. But in the shadows of the garden, unnoticed by either of them, a small crystal recorder captured everything, transmitting their intimate moment directly to those who would use it against them. The great resonance chamber stretched upward into darkness, its crystalline walls thrumming with ancient power. Captain Rena Doria stood at its center, her heart pounding as thousands of Ithorian nobles watched from the suspended viewing platforms above. Princess Seline sat in her hover throne at the chamber's apex, her face a mask of careful neutrality. "The challenge of harmonics has been invoked," Lord Theron's voice echoed through the vast space. "As is our ancient right when questioning the fitness of leadership. If the human champion cannot complete the crystal song ritual, Princess Seline's judgment in choosing such an advisor will be proven fundamentally flawed." Rena kept her expression steady, though inside she seethed. Theron had orchestrated this perfectly. The recording of her private moment with Seline in the garden had been leaked to the noble houses, causing a scandal that could only be addressed through traditional means. Now she faced an impossible task, mastering in hours what Ithorians spent lifetimes learning. "Remember," Seline's voice whispered in her mind, their telepathic connection growing stronger each day, "the crystals already sing to you. Trust in that." Rena closed her eyes, trying to focus on the faint harmonies she'd begun to hear since arriving on Ithoria. The massive crystals surrounding her vibrated with different frequencies, creating a complex symphony she was only beginning to understand. "Begin," Theron commanded. The challenge was simple in theory: reproduce the ancestral song of the noble houses using only the crystal harmonics. In practice, it required intimate knowledge of Ithorian musical traditions and perfect control over the crystal resonances. Rena reached out, both physically and mentally, remembering how Seline had taught her to feel the crystal energies. The first note came hesitantly, a deep thrumming that made the chamber shiver. Several nobles laughed derisively. But then something unexpected happened. As Rena's frustration and determination peaked, the crystals responded not to her conscious commands, but to her emotions. They sang with human feelings: love, anger, hope, defiance. It wasn't the traditional Ithorian song at all, but something new. Something that had never been heard in this chamber before. "This is not the challenge song," Theron protested. "She fails." "No," Seline's voice rang out, filled with wonder. "Listen." The crystal song had taken on a life of its own, weaving human passion with Ithorian harmony. It spoke of bridges between worlds, of beauty in difference, of strength in unity. The chamber's crystals resonated in response, creating a cascading light show that bathed everyone in shifting colors. High above, Seline smiled. "The crystals have chosen to sing a new song. Who are we to silence them? This is blasphemy." Theron shouted, but his voice was nearly drowned out by the swelling music. "The ancient traditions are alive, not static," Seline interrupted. "They grow and change, just as we must." Her blind eyes swept the chamber. "Look around you. The crystals themselves show us the way forward. They accept humanity's song. Should we do less?" Rena maintained the harmony, though sweat beaded on her forehead from the effort. Through her connection with Seline, she could sense the shifting attitudes in the chamber. Many of the younger nobles were entranced by the new music. Even some of the older ones seemed moved. But Theron's face had twisted into a mask of hatred. "If we cannot preserve our ways through tradition," he snarled, "then we shall do so through force." He pulled something from his robes, an ancient crystal focus, its surface crackling with dangerous energy. Before anyone could react, he smashed it against the chamber floor. The resulting explosion of crystal energy shattered the harmonics, sending destructive resonances through the entire chamber. Crystals began to crack and fall. The viewing platforms swayed dangerously. And through their mental link, Rena felt Seline's sudden spike of pain as the chaotic energies overwhelmed her telepathic senses. "Get everyone out!" Rena shouted, already running toward the lifts. But she knew she wouldn't reach Seline in time. The entire chamber was coming apart. Then she felt it, a new resonance, deeper than anything she'd encountered before. The chamber's master crystal, buried deep in its foundation, was responding to her desperate need. Without understanding how, Rena reached out to it with her mind and heart. The resulting song shook the entire palace, but it stabilized the chamber. Crystals stopped falling. The destructive resonances faded. And in the sudden silence, Theron's mask of superiority finally cracked. "Impossible," he whispered. "No human could command the master crystal. No one but Dash. No one but the true rulers of Ethoria," Seline finished, her hover throne descending to Rena's level. "The crystals have chosen, Lord Theron. Not based on tradition or physical ability or even species, but on the strength of spirit and the purity of heart." Rena swayed, exhausted from the mental effort, but Seline caught her hand. Through their touch, strength flowed between them, balancing and supporting each other. Above them, the noble houses were in chaos. Theron's supporters were quietly distancing themselves from him, while others were openly declaring their support for Seline's vision of the future. "The challenge is complete," Seline announced. "Though not in any way we expected. Captain Doria has not only proven herself worthy but has shown us a new path forward. The question is, will you walk it with us?" The answering cheer from the chamber suggested that many would. But Rena noticed Theron slipping away in the confusion, and she knew this victory, however significant, was not the end of their struggles. The path forward would not be easy. But as she stood there, her hand clasped with Seline's, the crystals singing around them with both human and Ethorian harmonies, Rena knew it would be worth it. Emergency alarms pierced the night, their crystalline tones echoing through the palace corridors. Captain Rena Doria burst into Princess Seline's chambers, her pulse racing. "They're coming. Theron's gathered his loyalists and they're trying to seize control of the palace's crystal matrix." Seline was already moving, her hover throne humming with increased power. "I know. I can feel them disrupting the harmonic fields." Her blind eyes narrowed in concentration. "They're using forbidden resonance technology, ancient weapons we sealed away centuries ago." The walls shuddered as another explosion rocked the palace. Through their strengthened mental link, Rena felt Seline's pain as the crystal matrix was torn apart. "We need to get you to safety." "No," Seline's voice was firm. "We need to reach the heart chamber. It's the source of all crystal power in the palace. If Theron gains control of it, he could destroy everything you've built," Rena finished. She'd learned enough about Ethorian crystal technology to understand the devastating implications. "But all the main routes will be blocked." A slight smile curved Seline's lips. "Then we'll take paths that only I know. Even blind, I can navigate the crystal songs. Besides," her hand found Rena's in the darkness, "I have you to be my eyes." They moved swiftly through hidden passages, crystal walls parting at Seline's mental command. Rena marveled at how their roles had reversed. Now she was the one following Seline's lead, trusting in abilities she couldn't fully comprehend. "The noble houses are dividing," Seline commented as they descended through a crystalline shaft. "Many are standing against Theron, but his followers are armed with the ancient weapons. The death toll is rising." Rena's jaw tightened. "He's willing to destroy your entire society just to maintain his power." "No," Seline's voice was sad. "He truly believes he's saving it. That's what makes him so dangerous." They emerged into a vast cavern beneath the palace. Massive crystals pulsed with living light, creating patterns that made Rena's head spin. At the center, a column of pure energy stretched from floor to ceiling, the heart of Ethoria itself. "We're too late," Seline whispered. Lord Theron stood before the heart, surrounded by crackling fields of crystal energy. Ancient devices were positioned around him, their surfaces carved with forbidden symbols. A dozen armed nobles stood guard, their weapons trained on the entrance. "Ah, the blind princess and her human pet," Theron's voice dripped with contempt. "Come to witness the restoration of proper order?" This is madness, Theron, Seline's voice carried through the chamber. The heart was never meant to be controlled. It's a living entity, a bridge between our people and the crystal matrix itself. And you would dilute that connection by sharing it with humans. Theron spat. I've seen the signs, the crystals changing, responding to their chaotic emotions. You would destroy millennia of tradition, of purity. The crystals are evolving, Rena interrupted, understanding flowing through her. Just like your people need to evolve. Change isn't death, Theron. It's growth. Silence. He activated one of the ancient devices. Crystal energy surged through the chamber, causing the smaller formations to shatter. Seline cried out in pain as the harmonics went wild. Rena caught her before she could fall from her hover throne. Through their contact, their minds merged more deeply than ever before. And in that moment of perfect unity, they both understood what needed to be done. The crystals were never meant to be controlled, Seline said, her voice overlapping with Rena's as they spoke in perfect harmony. They were meant to be partnered with. Together, they reached out to the heart, Seline with her lifetime of crystal-singing knowledge, Rena with her human passion and adaptability. The heart responded, its light changing from pure white to a rainbow of colors never before seen in the chamber. No. Theron activated all the ancient devices at once. I won't let you corrupt our legacy. The resulting surge of power should have destroyed everything in the chamber. But where crystal energy met the combined will of human and Ethorian, something new emerged. The heart's light enveloped them all, and for a moment, everyone in the chamber could see through each other's eyes. Theron fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the vision of his own hatred reflected back at him. The armed nobles lowered their weapons, moved by the beauty of what Rena and Seline had created together. And in the heart's light, Rena and Seline's bond transcended mere telepathy, becoming something that would change both their worlds forever. The crystal gardens of the palace bloomed with unprecedented brilliance, new formations growing in patterns that merged Ethorian symmetry with earth-inspired organic shapes. 3 months after the battle in the Heart Chamber, Captain Rena Doria stood beside Princess Seline's hover throne, watching delegates from both worlds gather for the historic signing of the Alliance Treaty. Your thoughts are practically glowing today, Seline observed, her hand finding Rena's with practiced ease. Through their enhanced bond, emotions flowed freely between them, pride, hope, and something deeper that had grown stronger with each passing day. I'm remembering the first time I saw this palace, Rena replied. How alien and imposing it seemed. Now. She gestured at the transformed garden, where human children played among the crystals while young Ethorians taught them simple songs to make the formations glow. Now it's becoming something new, Seline finished. Just like us. The changes following the Heart Chamber incident had rippled through both societies. The crystal matrix itself had evolved, creating new harmonies that responded to both Ethorian and human resonances. What Theron had feared as corruption had proven to be adaptation, strength through diversity rather than weakness through change. Speaking of change, Rena turned to face her partner. The Earth Alliance Council has approved my permanent assignment here. If you'll have me, of course. Seline's smile brightened the nearby crystals. I believe I've made my feelings on that matter quite clear, Captain. Her expression grew more serious. Though there are still those who oppose our union, both here and on Earth. Let them oppose, Rena said firmly. We've proven that strength comes in many forms. Your people once thought a blind princess couldn't rule effectively. My people thought humans could never truly understand crystal technology. We've shattered both assumptions. The garden's crystals hummed in harmony with their emotions. Since their joining in the Heart Chamber, their bond had only grown stronger. Seline could now see through Rena's eyes when needed, while Rena had developed an unprecedented ability to communicate with the crystal matrix. Lord Theron, stripped of his titles and ancient weapons, had been sentenced to study the new crystal growths, forced to confront the beauty of change he had so feared. Some of his former supporters had become their strongest allies, having witnessed firsthand the power of unity in the heart chamber. "The delegates are ready," a young Ethorian aide approached, bowing respectfully. "And, the crystal choir is prepared for your performance." Rena smiled. The traditional signing ceremony would be accompanied by a crystal song duet, the first ever performed by a human and Ethorian together. She and Seline had practiced for weeks, creating a harmony that would symbolize the new era they were building. As they moved toward the great resonance chamber, now restored and enhanced with new crystal formations, Celine's thoughts brushed Rena's mind. "When I was young, they told me my blindness would prevent me from ever truly leading our people. That I would need someone else to be my eyes, my strength." "They were wrong," Rena responded through their link. "No," Seline squeezed her hand. "They were right about needing someone, they just didn't understand that strength comes from choosing your partner, not having one assigned to you. I chose you, Rena. Not despite our differences, but because of them." The chamber was packed with representatives from both worlds. As Rena and Seline took their positions, the crystals around them began to pulse in anticipation. Their song would tell the story of their journey, from strangers divided by prejudice to partners united by understanding and love. "Ready?" Seline asked, both aloud and in Rena's mind. Rena's response flowed through their bond, carried by the crystal harmonies that had become as much a part of her as her own heartbeat. Together, they began to sing, their combined melody reaching out to touch everyone in the chamber. It was a song of boundaries crossed and barriers broken, of strength found in unexpected places, and of love that transcended physical limitations and cultural differences. As human and Ethorian voices joined in, the crystal matrix itself seemed to celebrate, creating displays of light and color never before seen on either world. In that moment, watching the joy on Celine's face and feeling it echoed through their bond, Rena knew they had created something greater than either of them had imagined. Not just an alliance between worlds, but a proof that love could bridge any distance, heal any divide, and find strength in the very differences others feared. The crystals sang with the truth of it, their song echoing across the stars themselves. A new dawn had truly begun.